Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, hosted by the Fantasy Holics Podcast Network. You can again find this on YouTube. We're live currently, streaming on YouTube. If you want to go back and rewatch and see what these ugly faces look like as we're spewing out the stuff that you guys may agree or disagree with, you can find us live on the YouTube channel. Also, the link is on the Facebook page, so make sure you're going and checking that out, giving us a thumbs up, giving us a like. Letting us know that you enjoy staring at our pretty bearded faces every week. So, Brant, I know today and this week has kind of been the beginning of the, legal tampering period officially tomorrow. Today is obviously Tuesday, March 14th. Obviously, tomorrow, these guys can actually start signing their deals and be official. We have had some big trades go down, or some trades go down, I guess some bigger than others. A lot of big trades still left to fall where the dominoes haven't maybe landed exactly where we expect them to. And obviously some big names that have agreed to terms, but, haven't officially put pen to paper until tomorrow. But, you and I did both agree that we were going to touch maybe a couple of those things that fell to the teams we're talking about this week. But we're going to do a free agent recap for fantasy relevancy next week, especially with the dynasty landscape. So you won't hear us get into that a whole lot here this week. We're going to wrap up this divisional breakdown where we have the teams from the North divisions this week. The one thing I want to say is free agency has been fun to this point, for sure. Definitely a lot of moving pieces, some names going other places. Like, I want to bring this one up because I'm sure it's near and dear to your heart, but Rashad Penny getting another shot with another bird in the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, it's a move that a lot of people that won't mean anything to, but to you that means something. So, and all the Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell owners and Dynasty, of course, as well.
Yeah, and I'm gonna touch on that real quick. This is kind of what we're gonna do next week. We're gonna talk about a guy. Penny going there, I think, is a good thing for him, like you said. And I mean, he was a great back when he was healthy, and we'll break into some more details of how good he actually was when healthy next week. I know there's going to be a lot of names to be brought up, so we'll be getting a lot of notes in. As for today, we're going to break down these North divisions, and you and me both went, and really, these North divisions don't have a whole lot of question marks, really. They have question marks, but they haven't answered them yet. And so this one might be one of our quicker ones as it is. But I'm going to dive straight in, and I'm going to dive straight head first into the shallow end, and I'm going right after the Green Bay Packers. They're all over your networks. They're all over whatever you're watching right now. And a tweet just came out from Pat McAfee. Aaron Rodgers will be live on his podcast tomorrow at 12. Don't know if he's actually going to give us the information on what's going to go on with him or anything else, but it's leaning towards the Jets. That was my first question mark with Green Bay. I did my notes this morning or late last night, actually. And are they going to trade Rodgers? Are they going to cut Rodgers? Obviously, they're not going to cut him, but are they going to trade Rodgers? They're going to start Rodgers. That's the biggest question mark there in Green Bay. The next one is, if you move on from Rodgers, do you trust Love? There's your two biggest question marks. With the way they've been active, they reconstructed Aaron Jones to free up some cap space. They're losing a lot though. They're losing Tanyan, Lewis, Lazard just signed with the Jets, so he is officially lost. Randall Cobb, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers from that team, veteran-wise, is a big, big loss. Then they lost Amos on the defensive side of the ball. So they are losing some big names. They do have $24 million to mess around with in cap space and 10 draft picks, including the 15th overall. As of right now, we'll see what else they may be able to add. I really think they need to beef up the offensive line a little bit. I think with Love, they're going to have to be. I am going to approach this as if I think Rodgers is gone. With Love, I think they lean on Dillon and Jones a lot more. They do have Christian Watson still in town, which he made a significant jumps. Romeo Doubs, but what will Doubs look like without Rodgers if he does leave? We saw how good he was with Rodgers, but we know how good Rodgers can make people. So really, the biggest hit for them. They do have 4 picks in the first 4 rounds. Like I said, they also added the 15th overall pick is what I've already said. But biggest needs is they got to know what the heck is going on with Rodgers. After we see what's going on with Rodgers, then we can be able to actually see what Green Bay needs. We know they need a wide receiver, but that's been like 12 years they've been trying to add some weapons for Rodgers, and they continue not to add them. So maybe they'll add a couple more weapons on the outside. Like I said, I absolutely love Christian Watson. I know you do too. So as for Green Bay, let's see what they do with Rodgers, and then we can really dive in a little deeper with that team. The defense, they at times was great. At times they were a little questionable. So maybe they need to add some more veteran presence there to keep the consistency up. But Green Bay is a huge question mark, and it's all centered around one person. And I guarantee he's soaking all this in now. He had all that darkness. Now he's soaking in all that spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely, Brent. I think that's a pretty good take on Green Bay. The one thing I'll add is I absolutely think that Jordan Love's ready. I mean, he's sat behind, like him, love him, hate him, dislike him, whatever. His antics are a little questionable at times. He's only won one Super Bowl, whatever. Rodgers is still one of the greater quarterbacks of the last, decade and a half, and is really the last one of that Peyton Manning, Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Tom Brady group left playing. And excuse me, I think, that's been very beneficial for Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love looked good in the game time he got last year. And I'm absolutely expecting him to hit the ground running. Now, the one thing that I will say that I think is a lot of people are sleeping on a little bit is, and I haven't heard it talked about much, but there's rumors that, obviously the Jets are going to give up picks to get him. But what happens if Zach Wilson goes back in this trade? I mean, that's not something that's been talked about, but it's something that you could see potentially happen. And maybe Green Bay says, hey, yeah, that's, what, we think we have something in Jordan Love, but let's have a quarterback competition between the couple of young guys, one that hasn't really gotten a shot yet and one that, kind of almost lost his shot. Maybe that's the reason they're going after Rodgers, obviously. So it'd definitely be interesting to see, what the offense looks like under Jordan Love or, whatever else may happen. But obviously, Rodgers leaving, I don't think I'm going to put any of the Green Bay Packers still as a top 30 pass catcher. Probably we'll look at that more as the draft plays out and things start shaking down to their final spots. But, as much as I do love Christian Watson, I've made some big trades to go get him. I'm still not sure I'm comfortable putting him as a top 30 guy with Jordan Love. Now, I will tell you for super flex purposes, Jordan Love skyrockets up in trade value, obviously, the moment this trade gets announced. I think there's obviously some trade value there right now, too, but it's a gamble at this point. So you might be able to, maybe go out and trade a second-round rookie pick and a super flex to get a guy like Jordan Love if somebody's worried that Rodgers is going to end up coming back or whatever. But if Rodgers leaves, that second turns into a mid to late first rookie pick without Love ever having much time under his belt as a starter. So something to be mindful of there. I'm going to move straight along into another NFC North team here in the Detroit Lions. Another team that's like super up and coming. You and I talked about this the other day. We kind of think teams are going to jockey a little bit in that division for place. And I think Detroit's a team that's going to be challenging for the NFC North title for years to come. They have roughly $20 million available in salary cap space right now. And they do have some pieces on the offense and defense moving. Obviously, the biggest piece being Jamal Williams. Huge amount of touchdowns with them last year. Broke Barry Sanders' single season touchdown record with the franchise. And then they're also losing DJ Chark. On the defensive side of the ball, it's Michael Brockers and Mike Hughes. So there's not a whole lot leaving here. They're pretty young. They have significant amount of draft capital. They have 9 total picks, 5 of which are inside the top 81 picks, 2 in the first and pick number 6 and pick number 18. And the biggest thing that's interesting to me is this is a team that took on Jared Goff's contract and everything else in that deal with the Rams as kind of like a stopgap. But there's a chance that Jared Goff's back in the playoffs before Matthew Stafford after their Super Bowl wins. So, I think this team's only a couple pieces away. The defense took some strides last year. They have made some signings on that defensive side of the ball this year already. They've gotten a couple cornerbacks. Again, we're gonna touch more on that next week, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But this team's a solid defense away from contending in that division and making splashes at the playoffs. And I'm going to go ahead and say it, Brant. 2 first-round picks on this team. They're letting Jamal Williams leave. Bijan Robinson to the Detroit Lions may be something that I may start sparking a fire in. I think that could be so much fun. I know DeAndre Swift owners out there are going to be telling me that I'm, whatever, raining on their parade, if you will. But Swift may not be the guy, man. He's having a hard time staying healthy, and Bijan Robinson to this team could be a lot of fun for years to come.
Yeah, I think Swift is the guy. I just don't know if he's the guy in that system. We've seen him banged up way too much. A change of scenery could do him very, very well, or maybe actually, put somebody there that really does push him. We know Jamal Williams, pushing him for touchdowns, but I mean, maybe he needs a guy with a similar skill set that's going to push him a little more. Detroit, I said last year that I absolutely love Detroit, and I thought they were going to win the division last year. I didn't expect Minnesota to turn it on so well, just like they didn't do in the playoffs. But that's different conversation for later. But Detroit, I absolutely love it. Loss. I don't think they're going to sweat it too much with Williamson coming back from injury. We saw a little bit of game action with him last year, and he should be fully back to 100% healthy and ready to go and fill that DJ Chark void very nicely. Detroit's a team that I'm absolutely excited to watch at the draft and see what they do. I want to know if they're going to add that running back piece or if they're going to fulfill the rest of that defense. Detroit, I think, has a good shot at contending in the NFC North. I'm not going to say they're going to contend for a Super Bowl yet, but I believe you're right there with that, where Jared Goff makes it into the playoffs before Stafford. And now I'm going to jump into the Minnesota Vikings. They do have a lot of losses, so I'm going to have to look down here at my note. Some of their biggest losses on offense as of right now is Adam Thielen. They cut Irv Smith. I know they did add TJ Hawkinson, but Irv Smith is still a big loss in my mind. Madison, and I did have Bradbury written down, but let me double check that. I believe yes, Garrett Bradbury, the center, will be back. So they will not lose him. So they are not losing their center and quarterback connection, which is a great thing. Originally, I did have that written down, but today they restructured him. They did restructure. They re-signed him and restructured Kirk Cousins to free up upwards of $6 million in cap room they have now. So they do have a little bit of cap space to mess with. They only have 5 draft picks. And in my mind, you have Justin Jefferson, and you got Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. I'm sorry, I don't believe in the Kirk Cousins hype train that some people like to throw out there. I know he does have some good games and everything else. And then what was it, Jalen Reagor, I think they added last season. So the offense is definitely going to need some work. They're going to need a number 2 wide receiver. You can't expect Justin Jefferson to go out there and completely ball out every single night. We saw that when he gets blanketed. He does have a little bit of trouble, as any wide receiver in the NFL will. As for their defense, they lost Patterson. He has moved on and signed with a team that I'll hit on a little bit later. And Eric Kendricks have both moved on. I believe they both have actually signed with a new team. Mm-hmm. So we do know they're not coming back. So there's going to be some big changes in the NFC North. Green Bay struggling with their answers, and Minnesota with a lot of changes. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the Vikings do with just a little bit of cap room and just the only 5 picks. So I think they have to add a wide receiver too. I think that's one of the biggest things, and they really need to get that defense going again, and maybe get back to what they did best and run Cook and somehow get Madison back and really split that backfield up so to avoid injuries. But Minnesota's a team that I think they're on the downward spiral. With what they're doing here, I don't see them trending upwards or maintaining. Really, I think they're losing a lot of big pieces and not making a whole lot of moves right now.
Yeah, I think Brant, maybe they already have the guy for wide receiver 2 in KJ Osborne. KJ Osborne did come on a little bit towards the end of the season. I think that's part of the reason they were so comfortable in allowing Adam Thielen to be a cap cut. Is because of how good KJ Osborne did look down the stretch. So it'll be interesting to see if he's able to pick up the pieces and keep going with where he left off there and continue to build on his trust and established rapport he's got with Kirk Cousins, and see if he can solidify that wide receiver 2 role. And there's a lot of value there in that wide receiver 2 role in Minnesota. We've seen it for years, back when it was, Justin Jefferson's rookie year to now. It's that number 2 still been valuable in that offense. So, moving along to probably the busiest team in all of the offseason, wrapping up the the NFC North in the Chicago Bears. These guys, there's not a whole lot really. When you finish it with the first overall pick in the NFL draft, it means you had a bad season. Um, so really, there's not a whole lot of relevancy leaving in free agency. David Montgomery is really the biggest piece that the Bears have stepping off. Obviously that they're not going to bring him back. It doesn't look like. I did see a rumor that the Bears had called and checked the prices on Austin Eckler a little bit. So that's definitely interesting. They're maybe willing to add a veteran running back. There is some bigger names out there in trades with Eckler and Nick Chubb and some of those other guys. So it'll be interesting to see if they turn the keys to the backfield over to Khalil Herbert, or if they go trade for a veteran, or maybe even bring one in. But this team is really interesting. Before I talk about the draft picks that they have, obviously I have to bring up the trade that was made, right? So they sent the first overall pick in the draft to Carolina Panthers for the 9th pick in the first round, the 61st pick in the second round, a 2024 first, a 2025 second, and probably the biggest piece in the move, honestly, is DJ Moore. They went out, and instead of sitting around for too long and letting Justin Fields lose some confidence or whatever, they said, no, man, you're our guy. And not only are you our guy and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is, we're also going to trade that pick where we could draft somebody to compete with you or move on from you. And we're going to use that pick to go get you a bunch of weapons. So the Bears are doing right by Justin Fields. So it's going to be his turn to do right by the Bears this offseason. And the Bears have already done some moves. Like I said, I don't want to bring up too much, but it is fair to say that most of their moves right now are on defense, which is, in the NFC North years past, you've had to have a good defense to win that division. They've signed guys like Tremaine Edmonds, and TJ Edwards, two former starting linebackers for other playoff teams that are now going to be starting for the Chicago Bears. And they still have $45 million in positive cap space left to go out and get, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster ends up in town, or a guy like Dalton Schultz comes to town and ends up being a huge weapon for, Justin Fields. So it'd definitely be interesting to see what this team puts on the field next year. I still think that this is a team you and I are going to talk about a lot as the offseason continues to progress, Brant, just because of how many draft picks they have and how much free cap space they have. Again, with the draft picks, they have 10 picks in total. 6 of them are in the first 4 rounds. This team is a team that's going to add a bunch of impactful youth right out the jump. So this is a team that you're going to want to keep your eye on. This is a team that's going to make some more news the rest of the year, and they may have the biggest turnaround out of any team in football next year. So definitely going to be interesting to keep your eye on the Chicago Bears and see what happens with them progressing and moving forward.
Yeah, the Bears absolutely did what they needed to do. They're building around Fields and letting him see what they got. They also acquired a pick that could end up being higher than their pick in the Carolinas pick next year. Could end up being a better pick than what they're going to end up with. I believe that trade is 100% won in Chicago's favor, and I think it's 100% won in Carolina's favor because they needed that. They did just came across my screen, Andy Dalton has signed with the Carolina Panthers, so they have a little red rifle back there, but that's a different talk for a different time. But like I said, it just came across.
Matt Ryan also just got released.
Yeah, I did see that coming. So that's another veteran to add in Carolina to help out. But like I said, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, the Bears are doing exactly what they need to do. They're saying, hey, you're our guy. We trust you. Let's see what you can do. And maybe we have a pick to replace you if we really need to, but we're not going to replace you just yet. So I absolutely love what the Bears have done. So let's move into Cleveland, or into the AFC North, into the Cleveland Browns, who are losing Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, possibly Nick Chubb being on the trade block. What does that leave in their backfield? Not a whole lot. On defense, they're losing Clowney, Anthony Walker, Deion Jones. So they're losing a lot of big pieces, and they have not been very active in free agency. They've added a few names, but not very many impactful names. They have 0 first-round draft picks. They invested the house in Deshaun Watson. They do still have Amari Cooper there. Peoples Jones is still there. David Bell is still there. They have the pieces on offense to be an impactful offense. They also still have one of the best offensive line because I do not believe they missed too many going to free agency. They have 8 draft picks and $22 million to finagle with. But in order to compete in that division with Cincy and Baltimore, you better put up some points. And I do still put Baltimore there because I still believe Lamar Jackson stays around. We'll see that if that holds true. But Cleveland's got to do something in order to stay competitive in that division. I know they weren't competitive this year, but they also didn't have Deshaun Watson. And as of right now, they're trending into trying to turn into the Houston Texans and make Deshaun Watson do everything by himself right now.
Yeah, Cleveland Browns, that was just so bad for football last year. Just really, I mean, Jacoby Brissett came in there and did an okay job. But Deshaun Watson looked miserable when he got back under center, just like super rusty. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if he can shake some of that off and get back to his past glories this year, this coming season. And I'm not sure how that happens if you get rid of Hunt and Chubb and your run game takes a step back. And I'm just not sure what that's going to look like next year moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see. And the thing is, I think Cleveland's going to have to do something pretty big to stay with pace with the Bengals and the Ravens. And I don't expect the Steelers to stay down for long. That's why the Browns have been the laughing stock of this conference for a long while, is because of stuff like this. But anyway, moving right along. Let's go to the other team in Ohio here and stick with the Cincinnati Bengals. They currently have about 27 million in cap space, give or take. Their free agents that they have going out the door right now: Hayden Hurst, Samaje Perine, who did sign today with the Denver Broncos. So that leaves some question marks with the whole Joe Mixon saga. What's that going to look like next year? I still don't think Joe Mixon's a Bengal start training camp next year. I just think he ends up being cut due to all the offseason stuff that's happening with him right now. But we'll wait and see on that one. On the defensive side of the ball, they're losing Eli Apple, Trey Flowers, Von Bell, and Jesse Bates, superstar Pro Bowl safety there, along with really those are 4 starters from their defensive team, the team that's had them in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and a team that had them banging around in the AFC last year. So, big subtractions for their defense. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do, because they don't have any extra picks. They have 7 total draft picks. So, they can't miss on these if they want to stay relevant. They're going to have to hit some of these guys simply due to the fact that they're losing so many starters on defense. And then again, the potentiality of not having, Chris Evans, is that going to be your starting running back next year in Cincinnati? We'll see. So it'll be interesting to see how the offseason unfolds for the Bengals. They're going to have to be pretty active in order to stay where they've been.
Yeah, that line's going to have to stay healthy in order to keep that offense ticking. And like you said, it's the defense is the question mark on that team right now. And they're going to have to make some splash, either some splash in free agency, or they're going to have to make some splash trades or something. But they've got to get that defense to continue to play at the level it has been. I'm going to jump into another young team that you just hit on. In my mind, they have a nice young offense, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost Cam Sutton and Terrell Edmonds on their defense. And then on offense, they lost Mason Rudolph and Benny Snell. Not a whole lot of big losses there. Pittsburgh, in my mind, they're $7 million under the cap, so they have a little bit of money. They have 7 draft picks, but here's where they have to focus on. They have a young core already. You've got Pickett, you got Pickens, you got Freiermuth, you got Najee Harris. You have that young core on offense. You got to get that line bolstered a little bit so you can actually use that young core and not make Pickett run for his life. As for the defense, honestly, I'm not even sure how Pittsburgh does it. They throw people out there on the field, and somehow that defense is a top 5 defense. Half the time, I have no idea how. I expect that trend to continue as long as they have the same coach moving forward. So I don't know if they really need to add a whole lot on that defense. I mean, it would be nice to add some big name stars, but that offense, you've got to get that line going. If you don't get that line going, then this young core is just wasting their talent away now. And that's the biggest thing I have for Pittsburgh is you've got to get that line bolstered up because you've got to get them some help.
Yeah, from a fantasy standpoint, I'd love to see Najee get going again, and that's going to have to come through that offensive line. I mean, as talented as Najee is, when he's getting hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage every play, it's just not going to work.
I think Pittsburgh's success we saw in the past. Pound the ball, run that ball 400 times, get yourself another running back with Najee, run that ball 400 times a year, and let your defense hold you. That was your strong point, or early 2000s. Yes, that's how you have to stay relevant with the Pittsburgh, and I think that's the way your team is built.
They still have the same head coach from those successful glory
Yes.
days, so yeah, it makes sense. Let's tie a bow on this whole episode with the last team in the AFC North, and also the one with probably the biggest question mark of all of the offseason here, in the Baltimore Ravens. Currently sitting around 11 million in free cap space. Some big offensive guys leaving: Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill, Tyler Huntley, Juwan Johnson, Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson. So a complement of weapons that Lamar Jackson had. Oh, and by the way, Lamar Jackson's backup. On defense, Calais Campbell was a cut. Marcus Peters, Kyle Fuller, Trayvon Mullen, Jason Pierre-Paul. Those guys are all gone. So also some pretty good names off of the defensive side of the ball. Problem is, Brant, they have 5 total draft picks. There's not much there. There's not much this team's going to do. And let me just say that I do think the Ravens were intelligent the way they played the Lamar situation. Obviously, as I'm sitting here, working a 9 to 5, if you will, type of a job, it's easy for me to say to go ahead and just pay Lamar what he wants to be relevant, right? But when you got a guy like Daniel Jones making $40 million a year, what's 55 guaranteed to a guy like Lamar Jackson? I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Again, not my money, so it's easy for me to spend it. But with the non-exclusive tag that the Ravens put on Lamar Jackson, they're making other teams go out and do the dirty work. And, the Atlanta Falcons were a team that were mentioned a lot early on about going after Lamar if this happened. Here's the problem, though. If you put an offer sheet out there for Lamar and say you make it for $52 million a year, that's $52 million that you can't spend in free agency. You're stuck holding on to that offer sheet until the Ravens either decide, yeah, we're not going to match it, we'll take your 2 firsts, or, oh, thanks for showing your cards, we're going to go ahead and sign it now that all the other quarterbacks are off the table, and you can be stuck holding your spoiled milk cup. So again, it's smart for Baltimore. And if some team does come out and throw like some just ludicrous number out, then Baltimore goes, man, how bad would our franchise look if we would have matched that? But look, we got 2 shiny first-round draft picks out of it. It's a no-lose for them. The problem is if no team comes out and negotiates with Lamar and Lamar says, I'm not signing the tag, I just won't play this year. Because Baltimore is also going to find themselves in a similar circumstance where there's just nothing available. They don't have the draft capital to trade up to get a quarterback to replace Lamar. There's nothing available for these guys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and as for Baltimore, they're sitting there, they're holding on, just waiting for the Lamar Jackson saga. They're kind of in the Green Bay saga thing here. It's just they're just kind of waiting around. I don't see Huntley leaving. I expect Huntley to be the starter next year there in Baltimore. So as for Baltimore, it's going to be a little awkward offseason for them. Like you said, they don't have very many draft picks. So I know that this is summing up our dry session of the breakdowns. So they are this sums up our divisional breakdowns, and I am so excited to get into talking about some of these free agency. And you're gonna love to hear this, but I cannot wait to talk about your Falcons and some of the ads that they had. I was expecting a lot more about Jesse Bates, but I know you're sitting there saving that for next week.
Listen, I'm not gonna get too excited and put the apple cart before the horse here. It's agreed upon, but there's no ink drying on paper right now, so I'm not gonna be the one that goes out and talks about the fact that we just got an all-pro safety and then him go someplace else after he can put pen to paper. So it's legal tampering period for a reason. That means I have a deal in place with you, but now I'm going to come in and offer you $1 million more a year. I know you agreed, but what's your word? That's not a legal binding issue. So I don't want to brag about it too much. So yeah, it's definitely something that I hope, happens officially, but we'll see. There's still a lot to happen. We really haven't had too awful much fantasy relevant stuff happen at this point. It's been mainly defensive and offensive line guys, a couple quarterbacks here and there. So next week, hopefully we'll have a ton to talk about. Brant, I know you and I are super excited to be done with these non-sexy episodes, and we're ready to get going for the fun stuff next week and the fantasy or the free agency recap and then some draft stuff. So
absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to us again, guys. And as always,
stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.